If you've been with me the last couple Mondays, you've been noticing we've been doing some reviews on our Medicare stuff. We are going to do a final review on our Medicare Parts A, B, and C, D today. So it's actually going to be a jam-packed sales session this morning in regards to just a real quick review on all the parts of Medicare that we've touched on to date. As well as basically just discussing some of the upcoming events as well too. So I hope everybody is prepared. We got a lot of material to go over today, but it's going to be fun, very easily laid out, so everybody can get a really good understanding and a good grasp on what Medicare has to, what it entails. And even if you're not selling it this AEP season or going forward, it's really good knowledge to keep at the forefront as well too, as far as questions and just making sure that your own personal knowledge stays up to date as well too. So I want to say again, happy Motivation Monday to everybody. It is a brand new week. It is October 1st, the very first day of October. So I think that what was spring officially ended a few days back. I was actually remarking during this last Wednesday's session in regards to my weekly Medicare. There's been a lot of things in the news lately, especially with the Supreme Court judiciary hearings that have been going on. And, something that was ironic that I had found that the previous week is that actually back on September 26th, all the way back, 1789 was the year that the Supreme Court was initiated by George Washington. Interestingly enough, on September 26th, the same day of the hearings last week, was actually the first day that George Washington nominated his original justices to serve on the court. So, I haven't really done the math, but all 6 were confirmed by the Senate that day on September 26th in 1789. So it's kind of interesting how everything has come all roundabout with the first justices being nominated, and then now with this most recent nomination that's been put in front of the court as well too. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the news, and just interesting factotums to kind of keep going in regards to everything that's been happening. So again, welcome. Today is Motivation Monday. It is October 1st. I am your wonderful host, Robert Freeman, the Medicare trainer for the NatGen team and training specialist as well. If you have not joined us in the past, or if today is your very first Motivation Monday, welcome. If not, real quick brief overview of what we really kind of touch on during the next 30 to maybe 40, 45 minutes or so at the most. We're going to go over a tip of the week. We'll actually first review the previous week's tip, and then a current one for this week. We'll definitely touch on some of the current AHCP trends and then the sales leaders as well, which is always the fun part. And then we're going to jump into our sales technique, which again, we're going to kind of do a real quick high-level overview of Medicare, all 4 parts, A, B, C, and D. Just so that everybody can kind of round out that knowledge of everything that we've been just kind of going over the past 6 weeks or more or so as the AEP rolls up. And again, just 2 weeks away. I hope everybody's getting excited. I am certainly excited. It's going to be an amazing Medicare season. The opportunities that are out there are just endless right now with this field. And I foresee a lot of money being made, a lot of really good connections with clients being made as well too. So it's a really good product just to be in general. So again, previous week's tips, we actually had gone over the Pack the Points review. We had actually discussed the actual reward tier structure in regards to this, as far as the points being earned from anywhere from the Health Protector Guard all the way down to like the Teladoc from United Healthcare. So this product, in terms, basically it's something that was going on where you could actually qualify once you had a minimum of 500 points. Would have been something you signed up for about 2 weeks ago to start earning these points and then get on the trip. I don't know if they've actually announced where the trip is going to as of yet, but check the UHC site and make sure that you've signed up for that so that you can continue to do that, because this is going on from September 1st through December 31st to get those eligible applications submitted and then the points earned and assigned. You definitely have to make sure that you do register to be eligible, so pop onto the site if you haven't done so already and get yourself signed up. What we actually discussed previously in regards to the tip of the week was just kind of a reminder in regards to the training schedule that's going on. Obviously, I'm sure that if you're not already tired of me just kind of with my shameless plugs, but we do have an ongoing weekly Wednesday Medicare AEP series in regards to really high-level overviews with Medicare 101 parts A, B, C, and D, which again we're going to review pretty quickly today. This Wednesday is the final review of parts C and D, so if you weren't with me about 2 weeks ago, you can definitely sign up for that and then view that one as well as any of the other ones. We're actually working with your marketing team right now, and I'm going to get an announcement out either later today or tomorrow in regards to where these are going to be housed and stored so that you can refer to these and just sign on in and listen to my wonderful self go over the Medicare parts. So this week, again, we're going to be doing part C and B this coming Wednesday. If you haven't already done that, or if you just want to do some, just some knowledge refreshing in regards to the new amounts of anything as far as, things like deductibles, which we're going to touch on again today. And then the following week, the following Wednesday, we're actually going to go over a main review, which is kind of a more in-depth of what we're going to do today, but it's going to touch on all of our parts. Plus, we're going to actually dive into the Medigap plan, specifically the NHIC product as well too, and kind of show you where Medigap plans can be something that you can easily tie in and bundle with a Medicare plan anyhow, in regards to the fact that it's going to cover all of those, deductibles and copays and coinsurance things that possibly A and B don't cover. And then following that, the week of that as well, as far as 10/10, it's either going to be that same Wednesday or maybe a Thursday or Friday in that week. We're going to actually have a completely separate AEP compliance webinar. We're going to basically go over things that you can and can't do in regards to your marketing aspect and your marketing appointments in regards to things you can say over the phone, one-on-one group events. So, keep an eye out for that. That email announcement's coming on this week as well too, with a specific date and time, and then a sign up and registration link for it as well too. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive into today's trends. So I have been just amazed over the past 5, 6, even 7 weeks. The amount of statistics and the increases that I've seen is just amazing. You guys are doing an outstanding job. On our short-term medical and our fixed benefit sides, NatGen has been holding strong for a good 7 weeks here, as well as VBA leading on the fixed benefit side. You guys are killing it on the fixed benefit. So really, really good job. 7 weeks in a row on that. Just amazing statistics to look at. Supplementally speaking, on the accident, the critical illness, and the dental side, we've had increases across the board for probably the last 6+ weeks. And even if it wasn't an increase, then that it was even, it's just been some really good, amazing numbers. You guys deserve a huge round of applause. The numbers and the amounts that I'm seeing are just amazing. NHIC actually just a little bit this week took over the top spot on the accident. So for the previous weeks, it was right there just within a couple sales, and it finally took over this week. At CBL, 6 weeks in a row again on the critical illness side. Excellent job. And Golden Rule popped up on the dental side this week. Now, as far as our statistics are concerned with selling on the short-term medical side, so give a round of applause to everybody. Justin, you actually took over the top spot this week. Last week we had Katya, Jacob, and Elaine. Only a really small adjustment with the numbers this week, but Dustin, Pearson, Susan, Natalie, and Andrew, you guys are doing an amazing job. Andrew popped up on the board this week. He had been kind of just going back and forth with the names, but again, as it comes down to this, you guys have done an amazing job, and I wish I could say all 20, 30, 40, 50 plus names that I see on the list every day, but you guys are amazing. Keep up the outstanding work, and great job to you three taking the top spot on the short-term medical side. On the limited benefit side, we have a little bit of an adjustment this week. We had Katya, Robert, and Gerald last week. This week, we actually had a little bit of an adjustment for the third spot. We had Filbert pop up on there. Great job, Filbert. You are popping up onto the board. And Katya and Robert, you guys are doing amazing. You are holding strong and kind of back and forth in that aspect, but everybody deserves a huge round of applause on that. That again, the numbers that I've been seeing have just been outstanding and amazing, and especially coming into the AP season here, everybody has been doing an amazing job. So keep up the great work on that. Now, as I mentioned prior, what we've been actually doing over the past 6 or 7 weeks is really kind of getting everybody prepared for the AEP season in regards to Medicare's annual enrollment. So what we initially actually started out with probably about 6 or 7 weeks ago is we actually initiated a preview and a preparing to sell checklist that we actually had supplied to everybody. And what it actually entailed was a period of about 3 weeks where we covered these main top 8 steps, where we kind of went over how to create a marketing plan in the really basic sense, in the aspect, of course, that the marketing plan that you're going to be creating is going to be your plan, something that you're comfortable with, in an aspect, in an area and a demographic that you're going to be working in, of course. That marketing plan is something that can be molded and changed from year to year, but it's going to be something that you're going to be comfortable with. And that's something that can actually adjust as the season goes on as well too. What we then dove into after that was learning how to make sure, of course, as far as getting ready to sell and make sure that you're prepared to sell, is of course getting your AHIP done, one of the most important things to make sure that you can sell the Medicare product in general, and then ensuring that you're contracting with the carriers and getting those carrier certificates transmitted over, and making sure that you're ready to sell with your carriers that you're choosing. Notwithstanding that, at the same time, things with the systems can be changing. You want to always make sure that you're up to date on the carrier systems information, making sure that even our systems, because our systems can change. If you look at your watch, 10 minutes goes by, something else might adjust with that. So making sure that you really are getting to know your systems here, your carrier sites, because you are going to be your clients and your book of business's best source of information. So as long as you are confident in the information, they are going to be confident as well too. So definitely keeping that knowledge at the forefront is always critical, especially with the AEP rolling up here. In regards to that pipeline as well too, you do always want to be keeping an eye on your current pipeline, building it and expanding it, as well as making sure that you're utilizing those lead sources in regards to building it and making it just expand massively now. Again, as I started out at the beginning here, the Medicare product in general is just exploding. If I tell you right now, 100% honesty, that if I was not sitting here training, this would be the product that I would be selling personally in regards to this season. I can see a lot of money out there to be made. A lot of clients are out there waiting for your calls. It was something like 4.8 million people last year went without some sort of supplemental coverage in regards to Medicare eligible participants. So it's something that is not only growing, but it's a really rewarding product in and of itself to actually sell. And then, of course, making sure that you stay compliant throughout AEP. And again, as far as next week, we're going to be touching on those compliance portions as well. Now, besides getting ready to sell with these 8 steps, making sure that you're prepared so that when October 15th hits, you can just hit the ground running, or, pick up the phone and hit the phone running. The main things that we were really focusing on is Medicare in and of itself, to make sure that you're really kind of confident in the product itself. Again, whether this be your very first year or whether it be your 10th or 15th year that you're selling it. Things change from year to year. The CMS regulations get updated and changed sometimes by the minute. I know, for example, somebody in the compliance information has been just slightly adjusted verbiage-wise in the past week or so as well too. So things are continuously changing. So making sure that you're staying on top of things like parts A and B, as well as even top on things like with parts C and D that we went over in the past couple of weeks as well too. It's always good to make sure that this information is kept at the forefront. So again, what we're going to do real quickly here is we're going to go through parts A, B, C, and D. So this is a really good lesson aspect in regards to getting all of the parts of Medicare kind of put together in one little review packet, making sure that you kind of have a really good high level overview and ensuring that you're really solid in your base knowledge of what Medicare really entails. Again, as AEP rolls up in just 2 weeks. I cannot believe how fast this time has gone. I remember it's been 90 days ago in regards to the fact that it was just about 3 months away, and it was already just kind of creeping up on us. And now we're within 2 weeks as of the 15th. So it is just going to be here before you know it. And the more that you know now and the more that you're prepared, the better you're going to be. So again, in regards to Medicare, Medicare itself does involve, for original Medicare, there's parts A, B, and D. You got part A for your original hospital insurance. So what I really kind of like to do to differentiate part like A and B, for example, and if you've been with me, you've probably heard me state this, right? Part A being anything that's going to be in or inpatient, and then part B being anything that's going to be out or outpatient. Part A, definition wise, is going to be for inpatient hospital care, inpatient care, like in a skilled nursing facility or a home health care environment, and hospice care as well too. So what actually happens with Part A is that coverage basically includes any of the services and supplies that are medically necessary during that inpatient stay. The way that the inpatient stay is defined is that after they've stayed a minimum of 3 days for the inpatient hospital stay, that is when it's defined as inpatient. It actually begins the day you're formally admitted, but after a 3-day minimum hospital stay, that's when your benefits are going to be kicked in. And then again, it includes anything that you're going to need while you're inpatient, of course, medically necessary, things like IV injections for like pain medication, antibiotic medication, or even any sort of physical therapy that you might even be getting while you're inpatient as well. A lot of the specifics that are included as far as the meals, again, nursing services, special unit care, again, ICU, anything that's really going to be needed while you're inpatient is going to be covered under Part A. And again, that does include drugs, medical supplies and equipment, any sort of lab tests or x-rays that might be necessary while they're staying in the inpatient. Some blood transfusions are covered, and you'll notice that like the first 3 pints of blood generally are not. But again, next week, what you'll see as far as your Medigap, that Medigap coverage will actually cover up and pick up for that difference. And then any rehabilitation services, skilled healthcare, and then again, any care to manage your symptoms and control pain for individuals, for example, who are in hospice care. Premium-wise, as far as Part A is concerned, there's a little bit of differences with the premiums from Part A, B, C, and D, for example. Generally, individuals will get Part A without having to pay a premium. What that basically entails is that because they or their spouse, for example, they paid into their Medicare taxes, just like you see every week or every other week on your payroll information, those Medicare taxes are being taken out and you're paying into that. What that actually does and how it breaks down is that you actually earn a credit for every 3 months that you've actually worked. Obviously, 12 months in a year, that's about a total of 4 credits per calendar year. So for every year, you can earn those 4 credits. Now, once you reach a total of 40 credits or 10 years worked, that's actually when you then reach the premium free portion. You want to avoid saying that Part A is free or it's freemium, because there is the possibility that individuals may have a Part A premium. But generally speaking, if they have worked for those 40 credit years or that 10-year amount, they would get the premium free. Now, if they did not work for that amount, they could have a premium that goes up to a total of $422. The way that it's calculated is, so the way that those credits are calculated, like I mentioned, you give 1 credit for every 3 months. Anytime that somebody has less than 30 quarters or 30 individual credits in this aspect, that's when they are going to be paying that high amount of the 422, that highest total. Anything from 30 to 39 quarters, it actually jumps up, or actually rather down, it jumps down premium portion to 232. And then again, once it reaches the 40 quarters, that's when they get their free premium. Deductible amount for Part A CMS for this year, for the year 2019, is $1,340 for each benefit period. The way that that actually works is that that deductible is due for days 1 through 60. So if they go into a hospital facility or a skilled nursing facility, for example, the deductible is a little bit slightly different, but with the deductible in and of itself, that initial first 60-day period is what they're going to be paying up front of the $1,340. Anything after that, after days 60, so days 61 through 90, they're going to have a $335 per day amount. And then after day 90, it's $670. And then there is a limit to the inpatient mental health care with 190 days in a lifetime. Skilled nursing facility wise, though, there is a deductible of sorts per se. What I would more consider like a co-insurance portion payment. For the first 20 days that they're in a skilled nursing facility, there is no cost. Anything after day 20, from days 21 through 100, you're looking at a $167.50 total. And then after day 100, they are then liable for all costs after that. So again, things to look into as far as Medigap as well too, to cover certain portions of this as well. Now, as far as Part A, that's your hospital insurance, that's your inpatient coverage right there in a nutshell. Now, on the flip side of the coin, if you have your Part B, which is going to be your doctor's office visits or your out portion, your outpatient portion. What Part B is actually going to do is basically take care of those doctor visits, those outpatient visits, and likewise, as far as on the A side, where you have things like medical equipment, x-rays, and lab tests, Same thing on the Part B side, except obviously these are in an outpatient portion. So for example, if you go in and see your primary care and you need to have a lab test done or something and it's ordered and it's medically necessary, that's when that Part B is going to kick in. Something to keep in mind though, Part B is fully optional, but it is available to everyone who is on currently Part A. It is highly recommended to have them sign up for Part B at the same time so they can avoid any sort of late enrollment penalty if that were to pop in, which we'll touch on briefly here in a moment. But again, Part B is optional. They don't have to have it. Likely though, an easier way to do that is to make sure that if they are going to get original Medicare, which the terminology original Medicare would refer to parts A and B plus a possibility of a Part D, a drug coverage as well. If they do get original Medicare, it's highly recommended to make sure that Part B is included. If they get Part C, which we'll go into in a moment here, as far as like a Medicare Advantage plan, generally speaking, the drugs are already included in that, but parts A and B are already portion of that. So they don't even have to worry about that. It just basically is something that they wouldn't need to even consider because it's already included. It's required to be as part of the plan, right? Part B premium, the standard Part B premium is currently this year's CMS regulations at $134. Could possibly be higher depending upon your income. Generally speaking though, individuals who are going to be on Part B are going to usually be paying this $134 amount. If, for example, though, they are getting their Part B premium taken out of their Social Security check, which a lot of enrollees do, they do save a little bit of money, so it brings it down to about $130 on average. Now, as far as the criteria for the premium of Part B, they will generally pay that standard premium or higher as long as they meet the following criteria. And that criteria being that, one, they're enrolling in Part B for the very first time. They are not on Social Security. Again, if they're on Social Security and they're getting that amount taken out, it's going to be a lower amount, so they won't have that standard premium. It'll be slightly adjusted. And then a third, if they're being directly billed for their premium, that's going to be the amount that they're going to be paying, $134. So there are benefits, of course, to making sure that they can get that done, like ACH, enrollment for their Social Security, so they can actually take that automatically out of that information. But if they are enrolling for the first time, they are going to be paying that $134 premium. Now, the deductible amount for the Medicare Part B, just like any other plan, as far as like your normal individual health plans, generally there is a deductible that needs to be met. The deductible that Part B has currently set for the year for the plan year 2019 is $183. Now, after they meet that deductible, that's when the plan changes to what you would more or less consider like an 80-20 plan, right? So they would then be typically paying 20% of those Medicare approved amounts. And that 20% is going to be things like their doctor services, their therapy, and their equipment. So once the Medicare deductible is met of the 183 for that Part B, and then Medicare pops in and pays their 80%, they're then liable or on the hook rather for that other 20%. Now, as I mentioned before, if they don't enroll, in most cases, if they don't sign up for Part B when they're very first eligible, they generally will have to pay a late enrollment penalty. And then the downside of it then is that they'll have to pay that penalty for as long as they have Part B. Their premium could go up as little as 10% for each full 12-month period that they could have had Part B, but they didn't get it, right? So, and generally speaking, if they say, oh no, I want to sign up for Part B, they may have to wait until the annual enrollment period or the general enrollment period from January 1st to March 31st to actually get that Part B added. And then their coverage would then start in the middle of that following year. Now, generally, something to take note, though, is that they won't have to pay that late enrollment penalty if they meet conditions that allow them to sign up for Part B during an SEP or a special enrollment. So, for example, a lot of the times Medicare plans will differ from county to county, state to state. So if they do move out of the area or if they have like a marriage or a divorce and they qualify for an SEP, that then allows them to skip that late enrollment penalty. So if they don't have it, they definitely want to make sure that they wait to sign up if they have the SEP, and if not, then they'll have to have that 10%. So generally there's an example that's used here in regards to an individual that they go about 2.5 years without Part B. So, even though they go a total of like 27 or 28 months, there's only 2 full years there of the 24 months that they went without the coverage. So those 2 years would be their penalty total. So at 10% per year, that would be an additional 20% that they add on top of their amount for their Part B amount. Some of the coverages and cost share amounts, the way that Part B breaks down. So if you take a look here really quickly, some things like medical expenses, like Medicare is going to pay for their medical services while they're in or out of the hospital. Medicare then pays that 80%, and then after their deductible amount, right, they then are liable for that 20% of any sort of Medicare approved amounts. Again, laboratory services unlimited, generally at 100%. Home health care, 100% of Medicare amount, and then 80% of the approved amount for things like durable medical equipment. They would then be liable for that other 20%. Outpatient hospital treatment is unlimited, but Medicare pays those directly to the hospital, and then the enrollee is then 20% of the billed amount after they pay their deductible. And as I mentioned initially, as far as blood, it is unlimited. It's actually at 80% of the approved amount after the deductible, starting with pint 4 though. So those first 3 pints plus 20% is what they're going to be on the hook for after the deductible. Again, though, that's where your Medigap is going to come in. A lot of Medigap plans, especially the NHIC plan, will cover those first 3 pints of blood. So, you know, that is an important thing to remember in regards to making sure that you're bundling those together. Some things that are excluded in Part B, though, for example, are things like private duty nursing, intermediate nursing home health care. You know, there's a long list of items that are excluded, but the main thing to make sure that you look at here is that things like dental, hearing, you know, acupuncture, eye cosmetic surgery, things like that are not covered unless, of course, they were medically necessary due to something that actually happened because of an enrollment. Now, due to an accident, rather, sorry, like an immediate accident. As far as the enrollment is concerned, there is a 7-month window. The enrollment happens for the first 90 days prior to their 65th birthday month, and then the 90 days after their 65th birthday month. So a total of 7 months is when they actually are able to enroll. There are other ways to enroll in Medicare in general. So for example, if they're turning 65 and they're already on Social Security or like a railroad, they automatically get enrolled. Likewise with Social Security disability, it's going to be automatically enrolled once they hit their threshold of the 24 months. And then if they aren't 65 and they're not yet signed up for Social Security, obviously they're going to want to reach out and contact Social Security about 90 days before their birthday month and make sure that that's signed up. As I mentioned before, there's multiple ways that you can actually take care of this. Automatic deduction through things like Social Security check, which again, they'll save a huge amount of $4, but they will save that amount in regards to that if they get an automatic deduction. Likewise with the railroad retirement or the federal government, if they have a pension check, they can get those automatically deducted as well. If they're anything like my parents, they might even opt for quarterly billing payments, which they would then mail in their amount, and then they have Easy Pay as well to deduct from their bank accounts. Now, as I mentioned for Part C, as far as Medicare Advantage plans, Part C is basically what you would consider as original Medicare plus a drug plan, all included in one, plus sometimes a lot of additional extra coverages as well. So Part C entails an all-encompassing plan in regards to Part A, B, and D, plus additional extra options. Now, the way that the Medicare plan Advantage plans work is these plans are all approved by Medicare, but they're ran by private companies like United Healthcare, Cigna, HealthSprings, for example, right? So if a client joins a Medicare Advantage plan, they'll still have Medicare. They don't have to worry about losing anything. As a matter of fact, they'll actually get a lot of extra additional benefits normally. They always get their Part A and B because that is required to be covered. So they'll get it from the Advantage plan and not what would be their original Medicare. Again, Part C is going to cover A and B. It must cover all of the services the original Medicare covers, so there's not going to be any gaps. So if somebody chooses an Advantage plan over original Medicare, they're not going to be losing out. In general, again, I mean, 9 times out of 10, they're actually going to get even more benefits, but it really just depends upon the initial need of your enrollee at that time, and that's where those really in-depth needs analysis go into play, and you know, where you're really just kind of making sure that you're doing right by them and getting to know your client before just enrolling them and then moving on to the next person. Some other additional requirement for coverages, they do have to live in the plans area. As I mentioned before, the plans can change from area to area, and there will be sometimes a plan premium. Usually the Medicare Advantage plan may not have a cost, but really depends upon the individual carrier for that. Thing to understand though, just like in Parts A and B with things like deductibles, Part C doesn't cover things like deductibles. There are going to be co-pays. There is going to be a co-insurance. Part C will help cover costs like for most drugs, but it won't cover everything. So you definitely want to make sure you're doing those in-depth needs analysis in that aspect. So other things just like parts A and B don't cover, like dental care, eye exams, dentures, cosmetic surgery. So if those are things that are going to be needed, that's when you're talking about those ancillary products and your add-ons and your bundlings as well too. Now, premiums can vary. Something to remember though, as far as Part C is concerned, is you're still going to be paying your Part B premium to Medicare. Obviously, that's either going to be automatically deducted or they're going to have it, their quarterly billing statements. If there is a Part A premium, if they have one, they'll still be paying it. But generally speaking, a lot of times, if you look at the Medicare Advantage plans that are out there, they'll usually be zero cost or a very low cost anyhow in that aspect. Just like Parts A and B, there are deductibles, co-payments, and co-insurance involved with Medicare Advantage plans. The thing to remember, though, is that some of these plans do have them and some don't. It really just depends upon the individual carrier and the way that they've actually set up their plan. The nice thing about it, though, is that you're not going to be doing double payment duty in regards to deductibles. Your Part A and B deductibles don't apply if you were to choose an Advantage plan, right? So you're only going to have the deductible amount that's the Part C plan, if the plan actually has that. For most medical services like doctor visits, a lot of the Medicare Advantage plans have a copay, like just like the individual healthcare market. You'll go in, you'll pay like a $15, $20 copay. Again, that's really kind of up to the carrier to determine what those levels are at. And likewise, as far as things like co-insurance, like the 80-20 portion on the Part B, it is up to each plan carrier to set their co-insurance terms and their percentages, but things, like medical equipment and whatnot, those are going to be where those co-insurances would come into play. Now, as far as Medicare Advantage in general, there are 5 types of plans. We'll quickly go over these. The major 3 types, so you're going to have your Medicare HMO. And again, HMO is going to be something that's going to be an entirely in-network where referrals are generally required. You also have a Medicare PPO where there is a network. The network is a lot wider, but the difference here is that they do have the opportunity to see any doctor or provider that accepts Medicare, and they generally won't need a referral to go see a specialist. So for individuals that like to be able to have the freedom to just call up a specialist and be like, hey, I'd like to come in for an appointment, they don't need to worry about that on the PPO side like they would have to on the HMO side. The third most common type would be an SNP or a special needs plan. A lot of these, though, are going to be individuals that are like in long-term care facilities, for example, and these individuals are going to be eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid. So a lot of times it's going to be individuals who have like a chronic or a disabling condition. They are available in limited areas. So if you are dealing with an individual enrollee that meets these qualifications, make sure that the plan is available in the area, of course. The other less common plans are like a PFFSP plan, a private fee-for-service plan, or a medical savings account plan. If you've joined me over the past couple weeks, you'll remember that the medical savings account plans are actually getting a lot more popular, very similar to like the health savings account plans that are out there on the individual market, or for example through employer coverage. Those work the same way. You're going to basically have a plan that's going to have a pretty high deductible, and then additionally they're going to have a savings account that's as money put into it, for which Medicare is going to deposit money that they can actually use to pay those health costs. Quick chart to look at here in regards to making a decision between original Medicare and a Medicare Advantage plan, for example. The main things that you really want to take into part, choosing between these two, of course, are cost, if there's supplemental insurance needs that they're going to have, extra services, their provider, if they're nationwide providers, for example, if they need a referral, is it going to cover blood? Is there any sort of out-of-pocket limit? Something to note here as far as Medicare Advantage plans is that Medicare Advantage plans do have an out-of-pocket limit. So the plans do have to have an annual out-of-pocket limit, which can be high, but it does protect them, for example, if they're going to need really expensive care throughout the year. On the flip side of the coin, though, if they were to choose original Medicare and they have really extreme health needs, there is no cap on that. So they could actually be spending quite a bit on their health care over the year if they're going to be having really expensive care needs. So that's definitely something to take into consideration when you're looking at that. And last but not least, as far as the Medicare portion is concerned, is you have your Part D coverage, which is your drug coverage. Again, generally speaking, Part D is going to be something that's going to be covered within your original Medicare coverage. So you're going to get a Part A and B plus the addition of a Part D plan. If you do choose a Part C plan, those plans do come with generally pretty well-rounded drug coverage. So that is something that's included within those. The Medicare Part D is optional though, and it is, again, it's sold by private companies and approved by CMS through Medicare. They do, again, just like other parts, they have to live in the plans area. It is optional for individuals in parts A and B, and then they can actually get Part D in 2 ways, right? Like I mentioned, they can get it through original Medicare and adding on a Part D plan, or they can get it through a Medicare Advantage plan that actually already offers drug coverage. And likewise, these plans are available for the calendar year, so they do have to re-enroll at the end of the year. Costs for the Part D plan, there are 4 things that could cost. There could be a monthly premium, there could be a deductible, co-pays, and co-insurance. So you really want to take that into account if it is somebody that's wanting to choose original Medicare and add on a Part D plan versus an Advantage plan. Now, the thing to keep note here, though, is that individuals with income over $85,000, or if they're filing jointly, for example, with over $170,000, their premiums could be higher. Generally, if the beneficiary's income is below the poverty line, the premium is going to be basically zero to little to no cost in that aspect. But just like Part B, there are tiers in regards to the income limits. So keep that in mind when you are dealing with somebody that's looking at possibilities of high drug costs. Now, with Part D, one of the buzzwords that are out there are formulary. Formulary is basically, in essence, just a list of the drugs that are going to be covered by that plan. And those drugs are broken down into tiers, generally 5 tiers, from the lowest tier 1 with the lowest cost up to tier 5 being the highest cost. So you're going to have your really expensive brand name drugs up in your top tier of tier 5, and really kind of like the generic or medications that are widely utilized down in the bottom tiers. So it's to make sure it's really good, and this is why you do those drug things and you go over the list of drugs when you're going through the enrollment so that you can actually make sure that they're covered under the plan's formulary. Now, just like other parts of Medicare, there is a penalty. There is a late enrollment penalty if they didn't join Medicare when they were first eligible. So if they didn't join, Medicare prescription plan. So if they didn't join the prescription plan when they were first eligible, the way that the actual penalty works is that if they didn't have any coverage for any period, any continuous period over 63 days or more after their IEP, so after that initial enrollment period is over, that's when that penalty would occur. The way that the penalty works is that it's calculated by taking 1% of the current national benchmark. For example, if you look down here in 2018, the national benchmark was 3502. This year, for the plan year 2019, it actually has gone down a little bit. So the drug costs are going down, which CMS has dedicated to do up through the year of 2020. So this year, 3319. So you take that amount and you multiply 1% of that benchmark by the number of months that they went without creditable coverage, and then you round it to the nearest 10 cents. And then just like Part B, that penalty does remain in effect for as long as the enrollee has Medicare Part D, right? So to avoid it, they want to join a drug plan when they're first eligible, and then if they don't, they want to have some sort of creditable coverage within that first 63 period or 63-day period, because once they go over 63 days without any sort of creditable coverage, that's when that LEP is going to jump into effect. And then when they are enrolling, make sure that they do tell them about any sort of drug coverage they had when asked about it. Now, another way to avoid the penalty is if they qualify for extra help. So for example, if they're in a low income subsidy or an extra help, and I'll actually give a URL address here towards the end of the presentation, if they do qualify for that, that does avoid them from getting that late enrollment penalty. The last thing of Part D that we would actually want to discuss is really kind of the donut hole. So the way that I really explain the donut hole is really kind of a period of time that the Medicare plan that they were enrolled in, they step back and they say, hey, you know what, during this period, we're actually not going to be paying as much for your drug coverage during this specific window. So the way that the actual window works in regards to the 2019 plan year is that they actually have an initial coverage limit of $1,266.25 with a plan limit of $3,820. Everything up to that $3,820, they're going to have their $415 deductible. The plan's going to pay 75% and the enrollee is going to pay 25%, just standard across the board until they reach that limit of the $3,820 plan-wise and $1,266 initial coverage limit-wise. Once they reach that gap, depending upon if they are either going to be doing a generic drug or a brand name drug, the enrollee is going to pay 30% of the generic side, for example. 70% for the brand name drugs is actually going to be a drug manufacturer discount. So for example, 37% of generic, 25% of brand name drugs, the enrollee is going to pay that amount until they reach their next threshold limit, which is $5,100. So really it's kind of a step up period in regards to the fact that once they reach their initial coverage limit, that's when they enter the donut hole portion, where they're going to be paying just a little bit more. And then once they reach that next threshold, that's when they go out of the donut hole and they get into the catastrophic coverage portion, where the plan is paying 95%, and then the enrollee pays either the greater of 5% or like $850 for brand names and $350 for generics, for example. As I mentioned before, extra help is available for anyone that actually does this. You actually automatically qualify for extra help if they have Medicaid coverage, if they have full Medicaid coverage, right? Or if they get help in any way from their state Medicaid program. For example, if their state pays for their Part B premiums from like a Medicare savings program, that would then qualify them. Or if, for example, if they're on SSI or supplemental security income benefits for like a disability or some sort of SSI portion, that would then qualify them for extra help. Something to remember though is that if they do qualify this year, they might not qualify next year, and vice versa. So if they don't this year, you can actually, even if they actually do qualify, they'll have to apply just to make sure they find out. But at any time that they qualify, they're going to want to reach out for that extra help, because that's going to greatly help them reduce those costs. And just to kind of wrap up, I live and die on the Medicare.gov and the CMS.gov sites. There's a plethora and a wealth of information on there. So if anybody has questions in regards to Medicare in general, feel free to reach out to myself and our training team, your direct uplines or your management team as well. But you can always get all of this information on the Medicare.gov or the CMS.gov sites. As I mentioned, the low income subsidy extra help link there is down at the bottom for the Social Security Administration. And then, of course, when in doubt, they can always call 1-800-Medicare or go to the Medicare.gov site themselves if they have any questions. Likewise for you, if you have any questions, training at ahcpsales.com. You can reach out to agency services at 877-228-8773. But the main thing to remember as we move into the Medicare season is that you're actually making really good connections with your enrollees. And whether it's a brand new sale from a new lead this year, or whether it's a renewal, or even whether it's a referral from one of your renewals, make sure that you're always making a customer and not a sale, because that's what's going to be doing right by them, because you're ensuring that you're making that connection, building that rapport, doing the proper needs analysis. But 2, you're going to make a lifelong customer because you're actually making that connection up front. And that's really the key to it, is making sure that, not only are you doing right by them, but this is going to be a completely full circle rewarding experience, because you're not just looking at them as a dollar sign necessarily. You're looking at them as a client of yours that you're going to be taking care of for year after year after year, with all those renewals and referrals that they're going to give you as well too. So in that regard, that is today's Monday Motivation. I appreciate you spending the 40 minutes with me today. It was a lot of information that we covered. James, I have your question here. If the presentation, we are going to be able to have these uploaded. The Monday Motivations are actually going to be uploaded to the AHCP site, and I know that Dan Giancola's webinars in the past are actually being worked on and uploaded, as well as mine as well too. So if you do want some information or additional materials, I can always work with you directly. So feel free to email the training at ahcpsales.com. I'll put that back up again real quick. And again, you can always reach out to agency services as well. But I hope everybody has a remaining a beautiful day for the rest of their Monday. It's kind of cloudy out here today and kind of gloomy, but you know what? That's Oregon in the fall and winter time here. So nothing new here, but I hope everybody has a great rest of their week and just go out there and continue to kill it. You guys are doing an amazing job. All right, so take care, everybody, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.